Welcome to our conference, and thank you for hosting us in Chicago.
Well, thank you for spending your money here. I have a budget to balance, so I really appreciate all of you guys.
We're spending an entire 2 days talking about the subject of reinvention, and we're focused on corporate reinvention. And I think people try to strain with government or political analogies to the corporate world. But in the case of Chicago and your terms as mayor, I don't think it's a strain at all. You inherited an organization that had financing problems. There was a previous leader who's very different from yours. You have to get buy-in from a lot of constituencies. I think it's extremely similar to corporations that have to reinvent themselves. Start with what your biggest reinvention challenge was during your time.
Well, look, I ran, one of the principal reasons I ran was the schools. The mayor in Chicago appoints the school board and the chancellor, and also the community college chancellor and board. If you know anything about Chicago Public Schools, 30 years ago, Secretary William Bennett called Chicago Public Schools the worst in the United States. Our community college system had the worst graduation. Yesterday, I just announced that 66% of our kids now go to college, one of the highest urban systems in the United States of America. Our graduation went from 56.5 to 78.2. Our math scores, about 60% of our kids now in elementary school read and do math at their grade level or above their grade level. And 83% of the kids in the Chicago Public School system are poverty or below. As Sean Reardon from Stanford said, it's the best public school system of a major urban city in America. So that was kind of just trying to do one case.
And since we don't have a ton of time, what did you do?
Oh, I was just getting into my kindergarten years. And then the community colleges, we just finished at a little from 7% up to about 20%. So let me, first of all, step back 10,000 feet. K through 12 is the 20th century. We're going to a pre-K to college model. And that to me is rare. You got to start earlier in life, you got to go longer. We did not have full-day kindergarten for every child. I made kindergarten universal my first year. We're now launching a 4-year, we just started this year, full-day pre-K for every child. We added an hour and 15 minutes to every day of a child's education, 2 weeks every year. That combined is 4 more years. If you're poor, you need more educational time, not less. We had the shortest school day and the shortest school year in the United States. Second, I happen to think educationally, the debate around teachers is a piece, but not the piece. The principal is the person that runs the building. They're the person that's accountable for culture. So we empowered our principals and gave them the strength. Lastly, on the other end, from pre-K and kindergarten, on high school, we introduced what is not novel, but freshman on track. So we deal with graduation your freshman year, not your senior year. Let me go back to elementary. Our fundamental view is kids start dropping out of college in 3rd grade. And so very focused early on the fundamentals and keeping kids on track in the elementary years, also freshman year. As I told you, the graduation numbers on the other end, we did 2 major pieces. One, if you get a B average in high school in the city of Chicago, community college is free. And it's the only public scholarship a dreamer can get in the United States of America. Not California, not New York, the city of Chicago. I do not believe a parent should go into a poorhouse to give their child a chance at the American dream. Second, our goal always was, if you get to high school graduation, our responsibility was over. We've reinvented high school as preparatory for post-high school. Our responsibility does not end on graduation day. That is not the destination, it's a milestone. We just cleared 46%, and by next year we'll hit the 50. 50% of the kids graduating high school have college credit already under their belt, which means if you're poor, you're more likely to go to college than before. And the other thing, and I'll just close on this, by the year 2019-2020, that school year, to get your high school diploma, you'll have to, and we'll support you with college counselors and in help, produce a letter of acceptance from either college, community college, armed forces, or a trade school. So every child, not just our children, every child will have a post-high school education plan, which is what they need for success in the 21st century.
You've also been willing to do unpopular things like closing schools. Yeah, I know there's a long list, but
let me say this. Let me say this. If you're running for mayor, your goal should not be your popularity. It should be the future of your city. And if you think you're going to deal with just your popularity, you're not going to be a good mayor. So that doesn't matter whether it's Chicago or a city of 50,000. There's nothing, my goal is not, there's a lot of decisions I made on schools that if popularity was what I was working on, I would have making those decisions. But I think closures were one, the full school day and full school year was another. It's not about popularity, it's about the success of our kids.
So training, important to all leaders. Finances, important to all leaders. Explain what you inherited and what you've done about it.
Can I do one thing on community college before I get there? Okay. We have the second largest community college system in the United States after New York. We have the most diversified economy in the United States of America. No sector drives more than 14% of our employment. So I aligned each community college with a sector of the economy. So if you go to Malcolm X, it's all healthcare. The hospitals, which is Rush, Lurie Children, Abbott, Baxter, Walgreens, Allscripts, all do the curriculum. And the reason is I don't want you to just go to community college to get a job. I want you to get a career, that you can go up in the middle class. And I believe you can hire from DePaul, you can hire from Loyola, Northwestern, University of Chicago, Notre Dame. But I want the kids at Malcolm X to be part of this economy. And if we're not going to figure out how to get the kids that go to Malcolm X and Harold Washington to be part of the economy, you're not going to succeed just worrying about the University of Chicago and Northwestern. You can create both economic and political stability. But more importantly, it came out of a study I asked McKinsey to do for the city when I first got elected. It was one of the things, I'll talk about it, but it was also giving employers and employees. You want to graduate out of Booth or Kellogg? You got it here. You want to graduate computer science out of U of I? We got that. You want somebody out of sales and marketing from Madison, Ann Arbor, Notre Dame, DePaul, Loyola? We got that. We also have great students coming out of Malcolm X and Harold Washington. And if I can say to a future company, you can have the entire work suite and everything else all here, Chicago, game on. And 5 straight years in a row, Chicago's the #1 city for corporate relocations in America. And 6 consecutive years, we're the #1 city in America for direct foreign investment. Because talent is the most important thing you can provide people.
And you got these city colleges to focus.
By sector.
By sector. Now,
on the finances?
Yeah, how'd you pay for it all?
Do I have to say that? No. So here's, when I got elected, well, my #1 goal was growing the economy. I just gave you 2 data points. The other data point I will give you is Chicago's had the biggest drop of unemployment of the 10 biggest cities in the last 5 years. When I started, employees were looking for employers, and today employers are looking for employees. That's true of other cities as well, given what's going on. My goal was not just finances. Grow the economy is the goal. Finances were a piece. So we have a strategy which came out of this McKinsey Brookings study, what I call the 5 T's: talent, training, transportation, technology, transparency. Business leaders have an uncertain world. You're looking for certainty. If I can give you certainty around talent, certainty around transportation, certainty around the pipeline of that talent through training, technology, and transparency, you will pick those 5 certainties and then deal with the uncertain world. #1 city of the 5 biggest cities in the United States, Chicago, 39% of the people have a 4-year college degree. New York's 37, LA is 33, Houston and Philly are 32. I'm not competitive, but I want you to know that. #2, we have more universities than any other big city in the United States but Boston. #3, within a 200-mile radius, Chicago has more level 1 research universities than any other city in the world. You're a big company, where do you go for talent? #2, We were just rated O'Hare, best connected airport, 3 consecutive years in the United States of America, number 2 world. There's no market in the world, no continent in the world, you cannot get directly daily from Chicago. You're a global company, you want to get to your clients to you on real time, best connected airport, and we also now have the biggest modernization going on. Number 3, public transportation. We made the largest capital investment in public transportation, only system to date that's put 4G on the mass transit system, because the new office is the train.
Okay, so excuse me. What I'm
I'm
hearing
getting
you
to
say
your public
is,
finance.
I thought you had 5, but
I did. Talent, training, transportation, technology is the 11th most innovative economy in the world. Public finances, we fixed the finances through a cut and invest strategy. It came out of my Clinton and Obama days. So we've paired the structural deficit was 25%. We've eliminated that structural deficit, got it down from 630, 640, down to 97. We've also stabilized the finances. I would call what we've done on the public finance side more stability than having fixed it, but it's no longer the dark cloud over the city. And the other pieces have helped us grow the economy because I do believe in that talent. But so to me, public finances were always being described as our economic strategy. It isn't. It's a tool in the toolbox, not the toolbox. It was developing a strategy that was coherent around talent and transportation that has led Chicago to be, in my view, both on corporate relocations, direct foreign investments, a leader in the United States.
And fair statement that these improvements that you made gave you cover to do things like raise property taxes to shore up the finances, because that couldn't have been that was not popular either.
You didn't need me up here to say that. Well, yeah. here was, I said the public, well, here's the simple fact. The public pensions had not been invested in, the public pensions. We have 4 of them in the city, police, fire, labor's, and municipal. And I told the public, which is the truth, which is 1, the employees this is their retirement. 2, if you don't deal with this, it's going to drag not just the pension funds, but the rest of the city into financial straits, and people won't, the companies that are moving here will stop. The job growth that's happening will stop. And I was honest that this is a responsibility that we have to fix this. And I be honest is we have made it stable. We have a lot more work ahead of us, but it came as part of the economic strategy. If you don't do this, all the corporate relocations that are happening, all the job creation that is happening will come to a halt. It was part of an overall strategy rather than just it's a thing in and of itself.
A couple quick things before we open it up. What is the probability that Elon Musk's billion-dollar tunnel between O'Hare and downtown Chicago will get built?
Well, let me say this, since we're negotiating the contract right now, we're in the midst of negotiations. I feel very good. I mean, again, this is the way we did it, is it's his money, no public money. It's his reputation. That's what's on the line. It's a tunnel, as I remind everybody from a technology standpoint, there's a tunnel under the English Channel. I don't think the British are more innovative than we are. Okay, and so if I can take O'Hare as an economic engine, the Central Business District as an economic engine, and make it 14 minutes, you're combining and creating a single space of 2 of the most important economic and job creators in the United States. This is the 2nd largest, most competitive economy in the United States, is Chicago. O'Hare is the most important aviation airport in the United States. You make them a single space in a global competitiveness against London, Berlin, Tokyo, Beijing, it makes Chicago all that much stronger.
How do you react to the criticism, and it's sort of a meme on your tenure, that this is going to cost $25 to go from O'Hare to downtown? I'll gladly pay that $25, but
you're not even paying for it. You're going to expense it.
You better believe it. Yeah. Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you should be focused on not so much the business community all the time, but the ways to get average people back and forth to O'Hare better.
First of all, I'm about competitive choice, not choice. Today, both airports in Chicago are served by mass transit. 4 years ago, I launched the new Blue, the Blue Line from O'Hare downtown that exists. And it's a $450 million modernization. We're going to take about 8 minutes off the ride, and new stations all along the system. You want to go that route, which is the daily commuter route, it's going to be a modern system. And I launched it before I even talked about this. Second, you want to take Uber? Got it. You want to take on the side streets a bike lane? We got that. You want to take an express and pay that? You got that. So I'm not telling people to take that
Totally
system.
fair. Yeah.
They have a competitive choice at 14 minutes. It will cost you what they think 14 minutes is worth. You want to take the commuter system, which is called 40 minutes, and it will cost you $5. You can choose that. You want to go in a sedan, Uber, or a taxi, it will cost you, let's say, $45, $50. You'll pay that. You'll have competitive choices. Competitive is key to the choice part. And you can pick any one of them. That makes Chicago all that more competitive.
You've been involved in politics your entire adult life. What advice did you give to Presidents Obama and Clinton when they were lame ducks, as you are now?
Well, I would highly recommend the $5 ride for you. Well,
I'm flattered, so thank you.
Well, first of all, I think that's really, well, first of all, I don't view myself that. So we were the first city to pass e-cigarettes regulations 18 months ago. I just passed it the other day, 40-2. So.
You're on the job, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I told everybody when I announced rather that I wasn't going to seek re-election, that I'm going to run through the tape. And
I don't think anyone would expect anything less from
yeah, and I think that, I don't think both President Clinton or President Obama viewed their final months in office, and I always saw this as a gift. And it's a gift, and I hope my goal in the remaining time I have is that when I walk out, my successor is going to say thank you, as well as the city that my time, because where it was when I walked in versus where it is when I walk out, I'll have left the city in a better place, and that's my goal. And I got 8 months left to make a difference that way.
So it's a worthy goal. Your questions, please. Okay, right there. And please tell the mayor if you're a constituent or not when you introduce yourself.
Hi, Mayor. This is Matt Park. I am not a constituent. I'm with Dakadoo, based out of Boston, and work for a Swiss company. So I'm very impressed with what you've done, especially with the educational system and aligning the community colleges with 14 industry segments. And it sounds like you're very competitive and you have a right to be very proud of your accomplishments. But I'm wondering, are you sharing this highly innovative strategy with other cities?
You know, I talked to a university, I won't mention who, because it started the subject, which was, you always do stories, it's a business magazine, about turnarounds. And I said, you've never done them on the public side. I mean, 30 years ago, just to take schools, William Bennett, Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Education, called the Chicago Public Schools the worst in the United States. Stanford, University of Chicago, and UIC, University of Illinois, Chicago. All three independently over 18 months came out and said it's the best public school system in the United States of a major urban system. And I actually think, how do you take a public entity which has politics and a whole host of other things? Not that private sector doesn't have politics. I don't buy that. I've been in the private sector. It's not true. You guys do have politics. It's called office politics. But how do you do a turnaround in a public domain versus a private? And how do you do a case study of that? Because I think it's relevant because all of us are facing similar challenges. Number two, mayors share a lot of ideas and then call them original. I'll give you, so one example, just a simple. We're doing all the streetlights in the city of Chicago LED. It's a 4-year plan. We're also doing with a smart grid, which will make it the largest LED conversion and smart grid. The original idea came from something Mayor Gregor out of Vancouver did. And we were at a conference. He said something. I'm a notorious note taker. So I wrote it down on my note, came back to the staff, and that became the idea. But I'll give you one example. I was with the mayor of Houston the other day, a month ago, Sylvester. And I'm now doing 3 public housing, veteran senior housing, with world-class architects from the city of Chicago, Skidmore, Roden, and Perkins & Will, with a neighborhood library in the public housing. So world-class architecture, public housing, with a neighborhood library in the neighborhoods of the city of Chicago. And Sylvester was sitting there, we were chatting, he wants to do the replica, and he's actually studying it right now, how to take that to Houston. Because I actually think that's a way to create community, which is in a world that's being pulled apart economically, culturally, racially. How do you create space that we can all share together? He's trying to replicate that idea in Houston. And we share ideas all the time, but our structures are different. He doesn't control the libraries the way I do. He controls housing the way I do. So there's similarities, and then you have to make adjustments for different kind of structures of government.
Please.
Mayor Movafagi, I live in the city of San Francisco. First of all, congratulations on the impact you've been able to have here. My question is more on what constraints, you've obviously talked about a lot of the changes that you've been able to create. What are the actual changes you'd make in terms of removing some of the constraints that would have made you even more impactful to have been able to drive a lot of the things that you weren't able to drive?
What are some of the constraints? Well, you know, one of the key situations, let me answer it this way. The mayor in Chicago, while the system constitutionally is set up for a strong city council, historically, it's a strong mayor. The mayor appoints the school board and the head of the schools, community colleges, libraries, parks, mass transit, airports, housing, police, fire, all in $19 billion enterprise. City council has to approve those, but that's mayoral appointments. So that's a lot of strength. On the other hand, when I came in, a big challenge, the budget was 25% structurally out of debt. 3 years preceding each year, the city took out $300 million out of reserves every year to balance the budget. Every year I've put money back in. The schools were taking money out of reserves. Now there was also a lot of finance issues as it related to state not equitably funding here. And for 2 years of the preceding 5, the mass transit system went to Springfield for a bailout. I could get that, I could be wrong about that, but so the fiscal condition, and 2011, I wouldn't exactly call the economy, it was out of the recession, but it wasn't, there were parts of the city that were still in a recession, big parts. And so the fiscal condition of both the public purse and family purses were not strong. And if you have a lot of ambitions, and now we have done a lot on a massive capital effort, mass transit, airports, schools, libraries, parks, but a lot of that was all done. And the more important thing, and which I'm immensely proud of, and this is beyond the schools, we went from 0 to 9,000 young men in all-day mentoring, or 4 hours a day mentoring. We went from 14,000 to 32,000 summer jobs with no federal or state help. And we took our after-school programs up to about 110,000, 115,000 kids. And to me, those are the lasting legacies. And I would have loved to have had a federal or state partner any step of the way.
Very last question. I thought it was so interesting that you made your announcement to not run for re-election, and you made the observation that coincided with you and your wife becoming empty nesters, which is an interesting time in somebody's life. So just a moment on your reinvention. What's next?
Well, one thing is I'll tell you a funny anecdote from empty nester, which my wife will now kill me